Okay, this how-to video is going to go through how to configure an ODBC database. So in this example, I've got a Microsoft Access database. So I want to go and make an ODBC data source and then run it through the CIS configuration wizard to make the connection between the database and OrCAD Capture CIS. So we'll go to the Start menu, we'll go to the Control Panel, Administrative Tools, ODBC Data Sources 64-bit, and then System DSN. I can then click on Add. So Cadence are currently supporting Excel, Access, and an SQL Server. You may need to, depending on what version of Windows or Office you're running. So if you're running 32-bit Office, you may need to get a specific connector that will give you the access to be able to connect to Access or Microsoft Excel. If you actually go to the Parallel Systems web page and go to the user guides, there's actually an app note that talks about this. So there's something called Captured CIS Data Sources. This gives you the method of what you need to do to run this. So there's an executable you can go and get from the Microsoft web page, and then you need to run it from a DOS command prompt with a slash passive switch, which would then install the driver, and then that would allow you, when you go to your data sources, to be able to see the Microsoft Access options here. Okay, so in this example, I've got an Access database that I want to configure. So we're going to pick Microsoft Access as the driver. We'll click on Finish. We'll then give it a data source name, say MyDB. And MyDB. I then want to select the database I want to use, so we'll just browse. So that will be on the D drive, and we'll look at a working folder, CIS Quick Start, and I've got an MDB file. So we'll click OK to that. That makes the connection. So I've now effectively got a MyDB entry here. Okay, so I can then go to CIS, and we'll go to the Options menu, CIS Configuration. We will click on New, and then we go through the wizard. So we'll click on Next. This is a list of all those data sources. So there's MyDB. We'll click on Next. We then get a choice of tables, effectively, that we want to configure. So these are the tables that are available in my CIS data, in my Access database, and it's which ones do I want to talk to. Now, in most instances, you will want to pick all the tables. In this example, just for speed, I'm just going to pick 3. So I'm going to do a capacitors, a diode, and an IC. We'll then click on Next. We're then going to do the mapping for the key properties. So there's 4 key properties: part number, value, schematic part, and part type. And what we're basically doing is these are the default properties in OrCAD Capture CIS, and these are the properties that I can pick from my CIS database table. So if I go into the Access table, I need to have entries for these. So obviously I need a part number, I need a value. So we'll click on Next, and we have to do this for each of the tables. So there's capacitors, diodes, and ICs. I then go and look at the next 2, so it's part type and schematic part, and again same scenario, part type and schematic part as the table property. So I'll get those for those 3 tables. Do I want to map a PCB footprint and a PSpice model? Yes, I do. So I've got a PCB footprint property. I've also got a PSpice model property, so we'll just come down and look for the PSpice template. We'll then click on Next, and I'm doing that for all 3 tables again. Which of the properties do I want to transfer to the actual design? So if I double click on a part and open the property editor, which properties do I physically want to see? So by default, obviously the part number, the value, the schematic part, and the PCB footprint. I'm also going to include description, but you might want to include things like, operating temperature or tolerance or voltage if you have those properties going across. So we'll click on Next. Do we have any browsable properties? So this is gives you a hyperlink inside the CIS database Explorer window. So if you want to effectively, click on a data sheet or click on a link to a 3D step model, you can make these browsable by enabling it here. And we'll then just click Next. So these are the transfers. It's like a summary window. And then what is the key property? So if I'm doing a search in CIS Explorer, what do I want to search on? Value is the key property by default, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. We'll click on Finish. I then get effectively the Configure Database window come up, so I can then look at each of the 3 tables that I've got configured and what are the properties that are being transferred, and I can make changes here if I wanted to. Okay, there's also some different change options here. So I've got things like, do I want to use a temporary part number when I add a new part? Do I want to use what value do I want to use on a design variant? I've got a not fitted part, so do not stuff is the default. I like not fitted, but you could also use DNI, do not install. And then there's also some relational options here. So I've got some relational databases. So I've got part number is the key primary property here for those three tables, and my relational table is actually the CIS manufacturer parts. So that will give me some relational information. I can click OK, and then it allows me to go and save this. So let's just go and save this locally. And we'll call this MyDB. So this writes the DBC file. This is so you can then give this to colleagues who want to go and map to that file. When I click OK, that then writes it. So when I use place database part, I then get MyDB. There's my three tables. So let's go and find a part, for example, select a part here, and I get effectively the schematic symbol, the PCB footprint. This is my relational database here, and I can then go and place that part down on the canvas.